Today is May 31st, 2006. I am Sarah Walker. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Venturia, North Dakota. Can you state your full name?
William Wald.
And when and where were you born?
House next door.
When was that?
Huh?
When were you?
Oh, when?
Yeah.
January 1st, 1933.
Was there a doctor present or a midwife when you were born?
No, a doctor from Ashley came out.
Were all of you kids born with a doctor?
Yes.
Wow. That seems more uncommon to have a doctor come out.
Well, they had midwives there too, but we always had a doctor there, yeah.
Wow. Did you ever hear any interesting stories about your birth?
Yes. The doctor was out on the 31st, and I wasn't supposed to live.
How come?
I was a preach baby, and they didn't know much about it at that time, and so the next day they had got the doctor again, and I was born, and I was alive. I'm alive now for 73 years.
Wow. Were you sick for a while after you were born?
No, I guess not.
Yeah. Did your mother have any extra complications from having a breech baby that you know of?
Not that I know of, no.
What is your earliest memory?
I'm about 4 or 5 years old. Very good memory. And,
Can you share one of your earliest memories?
Going to school, I guess. I went to school when I was 4. I started school when I was 4.
How come you started so early?
Well, I was anxious to go to school, I guess, and then we had such a mean teacher, and he made us kneel on coal and all kinds of things, and of course at that time it was when he said one German word in the school ground, you had to stay after school, and then I went until Christmas, and I backed out, and then I went back to the following fall, and I was 5, and then I took 3 grades in 2 years. A very good teacher. And me and Monsignor Bitter from Fargo, we were the youngest students to ever start at Sealand High School. We were 12 years old. But I went 1 year and I didn't want to go to school, so I quit. And so, like Billy said earlier, I don't think I didn't think I needed education. That's the only thing. I had 3 things in my mind, either be a truck driver or a construction worker, heavy equipment, or farming. Well, I chose farming and farmed for 46 years, and then I retired.
Now, Monsignor Vedder did actually finish high school through correspondence. Did
Through
you
correspondence,
do
yeah, and he was a certified teacher at 15 years old.
That he was.
Yeah.
Wow. So did you like school? Did you like going to grade school?
Not really. My mind was always at home, what I'm going to do when I get home. But I was, like I said, I was fairly good. I took 3 grades in 14 months, and but we had a very, very good teacher.
What did you like about that teacher?
Well, she was kind, and she helped you along wherever she could. And
did you struggle to learn English? Was that hard for you to do?
That I can't quite remember. I know I had 2 older sisters and an older brother. I'm sure I knew some English words, but I don't know how the oldest girls did when they, like Adam Baumgartner, he was the master of ceremony at the convention at Germans from Russia at Aberdeen one day, and the Germans from Russia, they pushed that every high school has to teach a foreign language, and Adam Baumgartner said, well, that's in high school, that's not so hard. He said, I had to learn a foreign language in the 1st grade. He said, I had to learn how to speak English. He said, I didn't know a word of English when I started school, and I'm sure there were a lot of them that didn't know a word of English when they started school.
Did your family speak more English as you kids began to learn English? Or did you still just speak German at home?
German all the way through, yeah. It was always German. And
So having to switch back and forth between
back and forth in
languages.
languages, yeah.
Wow. How many kids were in your school, in your grade school? About?
There weren't too many to start out with. There were my siblings, well, at the time, 3 of them, and 2 other ones yet.
Okay.
So they graduated from the 8th grade, and then for 5 years, me and my siblings kept the farm school open.
It's just you guys there?
Just us, just the family there, yeah.
What school was that?
That was setting up here. Well, it was setting in a half a mile south and half a mile in, and got moved out later on beside the road. And we did have a little summer kitchen, 16 by 20. And when we had this teacher, Christine Schatz, and then we had school a year and a half in the summer kitchen on the farm. Because why the teacher boarded at our place, and why heat that big school, you know, there's about 20 ton of coal, and for that year that we had school on the farm, then we only used 1.5 tons of coal to heat that little summer kitchen, and then the next year we started out on the farm again, and then this Ada Meyer family moved out close by, and then after Christmas we had to go up to the big schoolhouse again.
I suppose you made it to school every day then.
Huh?
When the school's on your property, you make it every day.
Yep. Yeah, now see, it's only about 7 steps over to school, and didn't have to harness up the horses and sled when it was cold and bundle up, and we'd get to school and our lunch was froze and our milk was froze by the time we'd get to school, and that we'd run home and eat lunch and go back again.
What would you do for your lunch hour? What games would you play?
Well, we only had a half hour for lunch. I guess it was up to the school board and the teachers, and we only had a half hour for lunch by the time we usually got done eating, and then it was over with. But when we were up in school, we played the same games what Millie said, Fox and the Geese and Andy Over and whatever, tag and hide and go seek.
Basic games.
Yeah.
What was the transition like for you going from country school to Zealand?
I was scared. You know, we only had 7 months of school in town. They had 9 months. And I was scared. I thought these town kids were a lot smarter than the farmers, but they only thought they were smarter than the farmers. I think the farm kids were smarter than they were. I really think so. And I kind of got over that right away. And after I found out that the town kids weren't smarter than we were.
Did they treat you differently to begin with?
Yes, well, you were a farmer, you know, and they thought they were big stuff because they lived in town, you know. But that wasn't too hard to get over with, I guess.
Now, did you drive back and forth to school, or did you board?
No, I boarded in town.
And who did you board with?
Adam Aberly family, just the north end of town. And
Did your parents have to pay rent for you to stay there in your room?
Yep, they paid board and room for us, yeah.
What would you say it was like growing up on the plains, growing up in this area?
Well, it was fun. I was a farmer, you know, from a little kid on, and was always interested in everything. And trashing out in the fall of the year, that was the most fun. That was a big, you know, a lot of people together, and we'd get up at 4:30 in the morning and get to bed at 11 at night, and we were only 6, 7 years old, you know, hauling grain away from the trash machine. But it was fun.
So for farming, you start getting the fields ready for planting about when in the year?
For the longest time, it was right around the 15th of April. I know some years we got out at the end of March. Some years we didn't get out until May.
How did you get the field ready? What would you do to get ready for planting?
Well, in those days they plowed and dragged everything, you know. I plowed with the 4 horses and a 2-bottom plow, and I seeded with 4 horses in a 10-foot drill. And I was only 8 years old at the time. But I got out in the field early.
Yeah. Now, how would that work with horses and the seeding? How exactly does a drill work for planting the seeds?
Well, pretty much as it did later on, but it was smaller. It was only 10 feet wide, and it took 4 horses to pull it. And
How did that go for? Was it easy to pull the horses along? Was that difficult?
no, it was easy. The only thing I didn't like is when it was windy and they'd lose their hair and you get their hair in your mouth. And it was kind of dangerous. I was like 8 years old. I'd stand on top of the drill box, to get away from this horsehair. And, well, anything could happen when you stand away on top of it. The horses were right in front of you, and like I said, it was very interesting. I wanted to do that. And
what would you do? What would be your next step after the fields were ready and planted? What would you do then?
And then we'd pick rocks. Pick rocks and fix fence for about a month or so, and then we'd start haying.
So for, say, like about the month of June, you'd be picking rocks, or?
Yeah, over the month of June, pretty much so.
And that's why there's rock piles everywhere?
Everywhere where you go, you see rock piles, yeah. Yeah, and I guess everybody in those days hated to milk cows and pick rocks. I guess that was, but you had to do it, and that was all it was doing. And
so at the end of June, then what would be the next farming task?
like in the 4th of July, some had started a little bit, some after the 4th of July, then you made hay. Put up hay, until...
Can you tell me about making hay, what you would do?
Well, we'd cut it and rake it, and then we were kind of modern with a hay loader. Back the box up, and the hay loader would load the hay on the box. All you had to do is kind of stack it around a little bit, and then you'd haul it home, pull it off with the ropes on big piles.
And then you were done with it? You just let it dry out?
Yeah, you cut it, and you let it lay about a day to dry out, and then you'd rake it and haul it.
So you haul it up to the farm,
Yeah.
let it dry, and then where do you haul it to next?
Well, then it got hauled out to cattle in the wintertime. It was all with the pitchfork.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
How many kids were there to help out with all the farming?
Well, I had 8 siblings, but only about the 5 oldest ones that I can remember were helping along. And after that, I left, the 4 youngest ones. Well, my oldest sister died at 43. She was 15 years old. And then my older sister was teaching school for about 3-4 years before she got married, and country school. And I left in 52. I worked for my uncle in Edgeley. In 53, I worked for the neighbor here. Then I went to Minneapolis and got me a job, and I worked there part of 53 and part of 54 until May, and then I got drafted in the Army. So I went in the Army and got out 2 years later. And stayed on the farm and helped out with farming until fall, and worked for her brother-in-law about 3 months, put up a new dairy barn. And then I started dating her, and then we went to Montana. And we worked out there until May in 57. And then in August we got married and started farming east of Ashley.
Kind of traveled all over.
Traveled all over, yeah.
Wow. Let's go back a little to farming. After you'd have all the hay, after you'd made hay, what would you do next?
Then harvesting.
And for harvesting, did all the neighbors get together to harvest?
No. You do the harvesting yourself, and you had a binder. Well, right away we did have a binder, headed everything, in a box, and then they loaded it, made piles of it, and then when you were done harvesting, then the trashing started. Then you'd run it through the trashing machine.
And for some people, they did do all that thrashing together.
Yes. My dad and my great uncle had a trashing outfit, and they trashed about 5, 6, 7 farmers every year, and seeing these farmers all work together, in trashing time. And
what all did you have to do for thrashing?
pardon?
What all did you have to do for thrashing?
Well, most time when I came along, then there were binders, and we all bundles, little bundles, and the grain, and then we'd haul them and run it through the trash machine, and the stacks that were header, they were bigger stacks, and then we just threw them through the trash machine with the pitchfork and haul the grain away.
And when you were done with that, was it about the same time school would start?
Yeah, a lot of times school had started already, yeah.
Would you stay home from school to help finish up?
I had to stay home, yeah. That one year I went to high school, I missed the first 6 weeks.
Was that a late harvest that year?
Yeah,
or?
it was a late harvest, and of course you didn't dare go until the work was done.
Now for country school, how many months did you go to school?
7 months.
Okay. So did that work out better than in town where you had to 9?
Well, yeah, see, and it was 2 months shorter, and it usually started in October and went until March. And it was same town school. They started in September and went until May.
After you finished thrashing and started school, were there still farm chores to do, farming related business?
Well, pretty much after trashing, everything was pretty much done, except getting ready for the winter.
And how would you get ready for the winter?
Well, there really wasn't much to prepare. You got the cattle in and start feeding them, and a certain time of the year, and then you fed cattle for 6 months.
So during the winter months, the focus would be on the cattle and the milking.
Yeah, and the cattle and the milking, and these farmers, we had chickens, we had ducks, we had geese, we had sheep, we had pigs, and we had cattle, we had everything on the farm. So that took quite a lot of work to take care of all that stuff, and especially with all the snow in the wintertime. I can remember the chicken coop when the chickens, they needed warm water, all the time, and so they lay eggs and shoveled that door open about 3 times, and during a blizzard, so the chickens got some water.
Were there ever blizzards that caused problems trying to get to the barn where you couldn't make it?
Well, not to the barn, but the separator, where he separated the milk, that was always down the basement over the winter. And I know one time we had a hip roof barn with 2 lanes on it, and the milk cows were in the lane, and the only way to get out of the barn was in the 2nd floor. And we put hosed the milk up to the hay loft, and then walked out the front door, dug it in the house, and brought it back again and fed the calves. And
that's a lot of snow.
Yeah, that's a lot of snow, yeah.
Did that winter cause any other problems just due to how much snow you had?
Well, not really. I know one year in 49 and 50 we had a hard time getting the hay out to the livestock. And then what we do, we carry hay away from the hay pile, and because you couldn't see any fences, they were storm shut, and we'd carry it out, and the cattle would tramp it down, and packed it hard, and then we could drive over that in the hay, and then we set up a temporary fence over the snowbanks to keep the cows out again. So these old Germans, they knew what to do, and they never run into a problem that stopped them. I mean, they just kept on going. One thing didn't work, they tried another one. But they always succeeded.
One way or another.
One way or another, yeah.
Were there a lot of accidents or injuries that happened while farming?
Not really. And up to this day, I still think of how dangerous it was with these horses. Why not more accidents happen? It is.
Because you never got.
I was an 8-year-old kid. I was out field plowing with the 2-bottom plow and 4 horses. And horses, you could never trust the dang horse, but I guess they were all right. And the only thing that my older sister, she was raking hay with a team of horses, and the wheel hit a hole, and the tongue broke off, and she fell off down into the rake, and they drug her about an eighth of a mile. And it was lucky enough for her, and you always heard about these dying rakes, you know, when they get caught in the bottom there, that they drug them to death, and they drug her about an eighth of a mile, and the hole hit, the wheel hit a rock and dumped her out, and of course the horses took off with, smashed the rake up to nothing.
But did she have any injuries?
No, she didn't have any injuries or nothing. She just kind of rolled around.
Was she willing to get back on the horses later?
Huh?
Was she willing?
Yeah, I think it's probably about 2 days later she drank again.
Wow. Now, the house we're in right now, you were telling a little bit of the history of it over lunch, but can you tell me more about this house?
Well, that was, like I said, when we were eating lunch, it was setting over about 100 feet, and the basement caved in. And then in '73, we dug a new basement and moved it over and set it down. Of course, when we started jacking it up, all the plaster came down. And by the time we got done, we put up 180 sheets of sheetrock.
But this was your great-grandfather's house?
No, my great-uncle.
Or your great-uncle?
Yeah. My great-grandpa's house was sitting here, where this one is sitting now. But and my great-grandpa wasn't alive when this was built. My great-grandpa died in 20, and he had a house here on this farm. And that's sitting where you get to go into Venturia now. That's still sitting there. And then my great-grandma died in 1926. I guess this house was just barely done. And I was told by this Ben Wald that grew up on this farm here, would have been the first cousin to my dad, that when great-grandma died, you know, it was in March, it was cold out, and they didn't embalm in those days or nothing. They had her sitting out in the porch here, so that the door opened, so she froze. You know, so.
Wow.
And I was told by these early pioneers that if somebody died, especially after a meal, you know, they would bloat, and they would have to tie ropes around the coffin to keep the lid on. So they blowed so the lid popped off, and they said they'd have to tie her down with ropes, you know, and get her married as soon as possible.
Oh, I'd never heard that.
Yeah.
Now, did you know your grandparents on your father's side?
Yes.
Who's your grandparents?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your grandparents?
Well, my grandpa and they got married in 1900. Married a Mary Anna Matron from Strasbourg. And they lived next door here. And my grandma died after her 7th childbirth in 1911. And then my grandpa got remarried about 5 months later to an 18-year-old.
How old was your
And
grandpa?
had 7 children. He was 32 at the time, and but never had any children from her. And these 7 children, and then the one that was born, I think he was 11 days old when Grandma died. And he got run over by a team of horses when he was 7 years old. So they only, then they had 6 of them left yet, you know. They all grew up. I mean, they had a very, very mean stepmother, you know, that I found out. And then, like my great-grandpa, he had lost a son in Russia before they came over here. And my great-grandpa had 5 sons and 2 daughters. And my grandpa had 5 sons and 2 daughters. And my Uncle Tony had 5 sons and 2 daughters. And his daughter had 5 sons and 2 daughters. And my brother Jim that lived next door, and he had 5 sons and 2 daughters. It's a lot of 5 sons and 2 daughters. It's quite a coincidence.
Wow. We were discussing names earlier. Did a lot of those kids share the same names? Is there a lot of using the same
Well,
names?
the only ones that a lot of them shared would have been in the relationship around here was Sebastian and Marcus. Because I know at one time, and that's not that long ago, a few of them have died already, I'd say about 15 years ago, there were 5 Marcus Walds living in McIntosh and Emmons County. You know.
Did you ever hear any stories about Russia from your father's side of the family?
Not much. But I read a lot of those heritage view from Germans from Russia, and I can remember they talking about 1929. My parents, when I was just a kid growing up, and they talked about that year, that how cold it was in Russia, and people, all they had to eat, a lot of times they didn't have no feed for the horses, and then when it was time for they thought the horse might die pretty soon, and then they butchered him and ate it. And frozen potatoes, they said they was so cold, that's all they had to eat. And I read that article, I think, in the Germans from Russia Heritage View too. And it was said that, I don't know, was it relatives or whatever, but they'd send some clothes over there to Russia, and they happened to put a note in a pair of bib overalls to see whether they had to buy these clothes or whatever. And they got a letter back that they had to buy those clothes. They didn't get them for nothing. They had to buy those clothes, Said that's how the rich got richer and the poor stayed poor, because they didn't. See, then the rich sold these clothes that were donated to the poor people. And
now, did you know your grandparents on your mom's side?
yes.
Can you tell me about them?
I think it was 1901 when they came over. But my grandpa and his brother were the only ones from the Mock family, were Mock, M-O-C-H, from Kintyre, that came over here. And they both had served 7 years in the Russian Navy, and they were out. And then the Russian Bolshevik War started, and they wanted them in. Well, my grandpa set the story off, and he went 2,300 miles back to Germany with a team of horses. Got on the ship and came over here. My great-uncle Peter, he got back in the Navy, and he smuggled his wife and a 6-week-old baby on the ship. And when they hit Canada, they jumped ship. And he said it often, it was in my head, that if they ever catch us, they'd kill all 3 of us. But he said God was with us. He said we made it to Canada. And every now and every 5 years have a mock reunion, and they sing that sailor song. And one of my cousins, maybe my 3rd cousin, she sings it in German.
Do you know the words?
And then they do a skit, some of them, but not too many. And they do a skit where they take this. Have this big chest where they take the baby out, where he had put her in when they come over, they always kind of go through that. And so I always say that that tells us how tough it was, how tough they had it over there, and how tough it was to get out,
Definitely.
And some of them didn't make it.
Did they ever share any other stories about life in Russia?
Not too much. I think they kind of shied it away, but they had it tough over there.
Now, your grandfather met your grandmother over here, though? You said he came over by himself.
No, I meant, yeah, they were married.
Okay.
And I think the first one was born on the ship coming over, I think.
But your mom was born here?
My mom was born east of St. Michael's Church out here, about a mile west. It was a Ben Holm farm. That's where my mother was born. And I don't know what year it was. And then his brother lived down in Hillsview, Hosmer, South Dakota. And then he lost his wife down there, and he came back up here. They bought the Cold Spring Ranch at Kintyre. These 2 brothers. Well, that was too much land. They kept 7 quarters for each one of the, these brothers, and the rest of it they sold, and that's where they raised families, and each one, my grandpa Jacob and my great uncle Peter, they both had 14 children.
Wow. That's a lot of kids.
No.
Now, were your grandparents, were they religious?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, not my grandpa Wald, but my grandpa Mark was, yes.
Would he go to church every day? Did he say prayers?
Especially after he was retired. And like Millie said, they never missed the Sunday in church. And like her brother-in-law said, he lived a mile east of here, and going to church. He said the winter time, his dad would put a big rock as big as he could carry it in the oven at night. And the next morning out, he used to start it out about 8:30 for St. John's Church. Then he'd lay that rock on the sled, and the mother and the girls would sit around that rock, and they'd cover themselves up. That rock threw a lot of heat. And he said they'd left about 8:30 in the morning, and they got home at 2:30 in the afternoon. Had to go 8 miles in with the horses. Well, the church was about an hour, a little over an hour long, and then come home. 8 miles is quite a distance for a team of horses to travel in.
So they really wouldn't have worked on Sunday.
Yeah, and what I hear when Millie said it about going to communion, then you had to go from midnight on until the next afternoon at 3 o'clock till you got something to eat.
That's a long time.
Or drink water. That's a long time, yeah. And we prayed the rosary over Lent every night, and missed church as little as possible. But it did happen some winter. I know the winter 1949 and 50, we didn't have no mail, didn't get to church, didn't get away for 13 weeks.
Was that bad?
Yeah.
What did you guys do as a family to keep yourselves entertained, busy?
Play cards.
What kind of cards?
Well, we played Pinochle. It was just new at the time, and like the neighbor over here, her brother-in-law Adam Schumacher, he'd hitch up the sled and he'd come over here and he'd pick my two sisters up and myself and my brother, and then he'd pick up Sebastian and Wald here, and then he'd go up and pick up John Gies, and then we'd go up to Joe and Frenzy Meyer and play cards. We had 4 or 5 pinochle tables going every night, 7 nights a week. Yes, that's the only, always with the sled and horses. And,
that's the only thing you could do.
Yeah. And when it was really bad, it had stormed so bad, Sebastian and Cedar Walt lived here, and that was always reserved when we couldn't go horseback or with the sled to the other neighbors far away when it blizzard so bad, and then we'd come over here and play cards.
Always get away.
But we kept ourselves entertained. We were happy.
And you would just play Pinochle, or would you play other card games as well?
Mostly Pinochle.
Well, let's talk about your parents a little. What was your dad like?
Well, he was tough. He's a good farmer. Everything had to be, he's very particular, everything had to be just like that. And what I hated the most, and come around the middle of March, and then he'd clean off the hayloft for about half of it. And then he'd fix his harnesses and oil his harnesses, for spring and everything. And then he had a lantern, of course, and we'd sit there and hold the lantern to him and fall asleep. He'd hit you one on the ear. See them with the hair shine here, Sleep when you get to bed, he said. And they were tough, those old Germans.
Did he express any other emotions?
Not really, yeah.
How would you describe your relationship with your dad?
Well, not too good, I would say.
You didn't talk very often, it was more all work?
Yeah, pretty much all work, and my dad did a lot of.
Did he make his own alcohol to drink, or did he?
No, he just bought it. And that wasn't too good, but whatever.
Was that a common problem among German Russians?
Oh yes,
drinking?
yes, that was a big problem. Yeah, and all these farms, this farm here, all these farms around here, they all run a batch of moonshine off every fall.
So they did make some of their own.
Oh yes, they make some of their own. They made wine, and run moonshine off, and even my grandpa run off a lot of moonshine.
Do you remember anybody getting in trouble for making their own?
No, but it got close, I guess, sometimes. And I know my grandpa, my dad set it off. My grandpa, the fits were getting too close, and he buried 4 gallons in the pig fence. He lost his markers and never did find him. And it was said, when as a kid growing up, when the fits, got closed, and this one guy had 8 gallons of that moonshine left in. And, well, of course, his wife was sick. She was in bed. And they come out, they snooped out the house, the closets and everything. But they could not pull the blankets back, and she was laying in bed on her back and had 4 gallons on each side. But they couldn't do that, so they got by with it.
Wow. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I thought that had all died out with the fits, but this guy, when I was county commissioner, he was the road foreman, and he worked in the bar one night, and I don't know, these 2 miles, this gravel road coming in here, that was the Sunshine Trail when I can remember, and it's still the Sunshine Trail. Everybody in the county knows where the Sunshine Trail is. And this Butch Boshi was his name, and he said he worked in the Lenny Pfeiffer's bar one night, and his fits came in there. And they asked me if I know where the bootleg trail is. Well, I didn't want to tell him, so I told him, no, I don't know it, but I knew it was the Sunshine Trail, was the bootleg trail, he said. That was in 54 already.
They were still looking.
They were still going, yeah, and this, like the Sebastian Wald and John Schumacher up on the hill, they run a batch up every fall. Adam Meyer up here, and Joe Meyer, everybody, almost every farm around here, they'd run a batch of moonshine every fall.
Oh. What was your mother like then?
Very quiet person. Very quiet, very soft-hearted. She didn't say much, but she smiled a lot. And like I said, she was a very, very good person.
Did she do household chores? Would she help out in the field?
Oh yes, she did most of the seeding in the spring. She cut most of the hay. And I can remember when my youngest sister was born in June of 44. She had her out when we were headering. She was about a month old. She had her sitting by the stacks where they had her. Every now and then, in those days they nursed their babies, and every so often she'd take a little break and nurse the baby and put her back in a basket beside the wheat stack.
And did your mom still do all the cooking and cleaning?
Well, by that time the girls were up. See, that was 44, and the oldest one was born in 30, so she was 14 years old. But she was out a lot too, raking, and the girls kind of took care of that. And I worked hard. We milked 35 cows over the summer by hand all the time.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, that was a lot of work.
So who was responsible for what chores? Did the older two do most of the cleaning?
Well, yeah, kind of. And take care of their siblings. And, like I said, Mother was out pretty much all summer long. And just in springtime she did the seeding, and then she cut the hay, and then harvesting she stacked the stack, and then we'd come home, and usually, the horses needed rest too, but usually home by 7:30 in the evening. And then some of them went in and prepared the meal, and the other ones we milked 35 cows by hand. Did it, when they came home from the field. And
what would you guys do for play around the farm?
Pardon?
If you had free time on the farm, what would you do to play?
We'd play cowboys and do some steer riding in the winter time.
You would hop on a steer and ride
On
it?
steers, yeah.
Not anybody ever get hurt doing that?
No. broke quite a few horses in the winter time because we always had 5, 6, 7 colts, and in the winter time they were just before they were here. We'd break them to ride. And me and my older brother would take them in the snowbank and put a long lead rope on them so they couldn't get out of the snowbank, and one guy would sit on it, the other guy would kind of hang on to him so he wouldn't go out. When he was real tired, we let him come out, and then we'd start training him to rein, to turn, and stop. And so we always found some pastime.
Something to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dug a lot of tunnels in the snowbanks because there were a lot of snowbanks. That was quite a deal when we dig those tunnels in the snowbank. And
I suppose when you have 6 feet of snow,
yeah.
you could get a couple of them going.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of time in the farm where we had a few trees out to the south there that the snow was laying in there 8, 10 feet deep. And even in the yard that one year, I know what it was, we had electricity. We got electricity in 51. And we'd walk over the snowbank to go to the barn, and we could reach the IRA wires, going to the other buildings. So a lot of snow in that. And yeah, because there were no shelter belts, there were no trees or nothing in those days to hold the snow back.
But it didn't cause that many problems, even when
No.
it all started thawing out. The fields.
Yeah,
didn't
like
stay
we
wet.
used to go to school up the track here, and we picked up the neighbor's girl here, and that track that was, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 feet high, where the snow was packed down solid. And towards last, that was just blew over that. The horses didn't go down. That was.
It's just that tight.
That's that tight, yeah.
How often would you go to town?
Well, it depended, probably every 2 weeks or so.
You'd all get to go in?
And then later on, especially over the summer, but in the winter time, the deal was at those times there was no snow removal. And the time when I was a teenager, the roads got blocked, and most of the time around the end of November they were blocked, and they stayed blocked until March or April till it starts thawing, and then the county would come out and push it off again.
So it'd be more in the summer you'd go to visit. What would you do when you went to town?
Well, after I got older, we weren't supposed to be in there, but when I got about 15, 16 years old, we played a lot of pool. And then there was a pool hall later on in town, too. We liked to play a lot of pool. And we liked to dance, which isn't anymore now. They used to have there were a lot of people around here, and like Strasbourg Blue Room, in June, the Catholics got married in the morning, in the beginning of the week, and they'd have a wedding dance on a Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and they had a public dance every Friday night. They still got a crowd. And we just loved to dance. And
How much would it cost to go to a dance?
$1.
Would you go to eat as well?
Pardon?
Did you go to eat as well when you were in town? Did you ever go eat or grab any food?
Yeah, when we went to a dance, we never went home without eating something. And for a couple of years, we'd dance, until the band quit at 2:30. At 1:30, the band would quit, and then we'd go and have a hamburger and a bowl of chili and a glass of milk. Then we'd go home.
Parents didn't worry about kids coming home at 2, 3 in the morning?
Well, I'm sure they did.
But there weren't curfews or anything
No,
like there
no.
are today.
And we'd go to Hagen, Strasbourg most of the time, to the Blue Room, to the dances. But they paid until 1:30. It was usually pretty much 3 o'clock when we got home in the morning.
And then you have to be back up in the morning to do chores, so.
Yeah.
Did you ever go into any of the towns for 4th of July celebration?
Oh yes. We always got something going for the parade or whatever. And that was a big day, the 4th of July.
What all was happening in town?
Well, there was almost anything you wanted to see, any kind of games to play, and and what I always tell people, everything had to be done by the 4th of July, and the menorah had to be packed down and blocks, manure blocks made out of for heating in the winter time and stacked up, and the potatoes had to be hoed and everything. Then you got to go to the 4th of July, and there was no gravel on the wall. There was mud roads, and then it probably rained an inch on the 3rd of July at night. Then you had to stay home anyway because you couldn't drive. You couldn't go to church. And I said, you had to stay home. I said, "What your guts out?" They said to go to the 4th of July, and they, like Millie said, cut $1. Holy mackerel, was that money?
What would you spend yours on?
Well, they had all kinds of games going on, something like that, and like bananas and ice cream. And I don't know, me and my friend, he also died when he was 19, and buy a quart of ice cream, and John Schnabel's rec hall, and then cut it in half and set it up, and gave us 2 spoons, and of course we were at the grocery store and each one had bought a banana, and then we'd sit down there and eat pint of ice cream and a banana.
That was your 4th of July.
Yeah, that was a good 4th of July celebration.
Would you ever buy fireworks and light off any
Oh yes, yeah, we.
What kind of fireworks? Were they just the crackers? Or
Just the small firecrackers in those days, yeah. But you didn't bring there were no fireworks to take home like nowadays, but we just bought them, I don't know how many you got for a nickel. You got quite a few little firecrackers for a nickel. And
to keep you busy. Were there ever any problems with fires when people would light off?
Not really, I never heard of any,
Okay. Now, you and your brothers and sisters, if you were getting into a little mischief, who would discipline you, and how would you be disciplined?
Well, my mother did a good job of that. And she was, like I said, she wasn't as tough as my dad, but we had a lot of respect for her.
Would she just yell at you guys, or what would she do to discipline?
Just kind of scold you, real harsh words, and every now and then you got a couple of slaps on the butt. And
how did you and your siblings get along growing up?
Well, we did a lot of fighting, like all siblings do, I guess. And the only thing I didn't like when I did something wrong in school, they blackmailed me. I had to do their chores when they come home in the evening, so they wouldn't tell my dad.
Did you get in a lot of trouble at school?
No.
Okay. Just minor things?
Yeah, just minor things, yeah.
Okay. Was there any competition between you and your brothers and sisters?
Not really, I don't think, no.
Okay. I see.
And I went through all 8 grades. Like I said, I took 4th, 5th, and 6th in 2 years. I went through all the 8 grades without a partner. So I was
were your siblings like that?
Huh?
Were your brothers and sisters like that?
No, I think they all had, I don't know, some of them didn't. Especially at the time when we kept the school open for 4 years, one in each different grade. But I went through grade school without a partner. I said I was the worst then the best. I said.
It was just you.
Yeah. Didn't have to compete with anybody.
Yeah, you always were the best.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, we were talking earlier about milking cows and farm work being really dirty work. How would you keep clean as a child?
This was called a dam out here at one time. And my great uncle cleaned that out in the 30s and hauled gravel in there. And that water was as clear as can be. And like I said, we lived next door. Well, in the evening we'd pick up a towel and a wash rag and soap and come over here and jump in the water and wash up. Then if that wasn't any good anymore, then we always had a 50-gallon barrel sitting by the windmill. And jumped in there and had soap in the water, soap in the washcloth there, and we'd wash up and we'd wrap an old bed sheet around us and run in the house. And that was our bath. The next morning we all took baths in the same water. The next morning dumped that barrel over and emptied it out and filled it up again. And it's a wooden barrel. By evening, that water was nice and warm in that 50-gallon barrel, and that's where we took our baths in.
And every night?
Pretty much every night, yeah.
What about in the winter?
Huh?
What about in the winter?
In the wintertime we took baths once a week, whether we needed it or not. In a round tub, and that was. Then when these long wash tubs came out about this long, oh, that was modern. You could sit in and stretch your legs out. Then, of course, then in '51 we got electricity. Well, we didn't get running water though until '56. But we never had running water at home as long as I was home, because they got in '56, and that's when we moved to Montana.
Would the water stay warm for all the kids when you would have to take a bath inside?
Pretty much so, yeah. And of course, the little ones, they got their baths first, and as they went along, the oldest one got the bath last.
So paid to be younger then.
Yeah.
What about brushing your teeth? Did you ever brush your teeth?
Very little. Maybe once a month when we went to the dentist. That's about all.
You guys did go to visit a dentist.
Oh yes. Parents were really particular about that, about the teeth. And
Would you would go once a year, or how often would you go to the dentist?
well, not yeah, pretty much maybe once a year. It seems like when you had a toothache, then you went to the dentist, you know.
You wouldn't go for regular checkups, though?
No,
You would wait
no.
until
You kind of had a toothache, and then you went to the dentist.
So would you go visit a doctor regularly?
No.
What if you were feeling ill or feeling sick?
I always had home remedies.
What were some of those?
Well, like camphor salve, you know, where you rubbed yourself. It's almost like mix came out later on, and Comida tea, you know, when you had upset stomach and crackers. And it seemed like they had a remedy for everything. And
What if you cut yourself? What would they use as remedy if you were to clean it?
to get the infection out.
Well, yeah, if you had an infection, or even if they just wanted to make sure it was clean, would you wash out cuts?
Axle grease.
You'd use axle grease?
Axle grease, the same grease they used to grease up the axles in the wagons.
That's what they would use.
That's what they use, and it worked good. And I told my kids often, and if you went to spring when everything was dry and then the shoes got put away, we went barefooted every summer. I was out in the field plowing barefooted. And I said, step in a nail or a rusty piece of wire or whatever, you get infection on. The remedy there was when a cow took a poop, you went and stuck your foot in there. And you could immediately, within a minute or two, you could feel it drawing this infection out. So you did, you stuck it in, that was nice and warm, you stuck it in there for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, as long as you wanted to, but that was a very good home remedy.
I didn't smell too good after that.
Yeah. No, we did that often, yeah, with infections.
I suppose you stepped on nails quite often.
Yeah, and it was, yes, and nails not as much as little pieces of fence wire or stuff.
Okay.
And I know they had my older sister and my brother had a scab on their head. Dadavek, they called it. It was almost like ringworm. And I know they had him by the doctor at Ashley twice, and they gave him salve on it, didn't help, and they took him to Linton to the doctor. He gave him different salve, and that didn't help. And there was only one Polak living in McIntosh County, and he lived about 2 miles northwest of here. And they came up visiting Sunday night, and well, they seen, what have these kids got here. Well, they said they had about 2 doctors already, and nothing seems to help. And I can remember my parents would talk about it. They were afraid it's going to get so deep that it's going to affect their brain. And it must have been the fall of the year, and they asked why she's got cabbage in the garden. Yeah. Now, tomorrow morning, she said, you get some cabbage leaves. Make some butter first, but don't put no salt in there. Homemade butter. Just make fresh butter, he said. And then you put this fresh butter on there, and then lay a cabbage leaf on there, and put butter on top of the cabbage leaf. 5 days that was gone. Just a home remedy, just cabbage and fresh butter. They threw everything out and had about 3 different doctors, and nothing seemed to help.
So remedies work better.
Yeah.
Do you have any other home remedies that you remember?
No, not really. Of course, everybody liked that castor oil. That was a home remedy. Oh, everybody hated that.
The castor oil that you would take a spoonful of?
Yeah, a spoonful, and it was oily and fish taste. That was ugly, but it seemed to do to help, for an upset stomach or something. Yeah, we never. I don't think I was by the doctor until I had a lot of bone problems. Went to chiropractors ever since I'm 13 years old, but a medical doctor, I don't think I've been a medical doctor until I went for my Army physical, I guess. That was the first time I had ever been by a medical doctor, I guess. And,
growing up on the farm, do you remember what it was like when you got to start using tractors to help out with the farm?
very modern, yeah.
What was the first tractor your parents got?
I had a 1530 McCormick partnership for a few years, but they really never used it in the field. They said gas was 8 cents a gallon, and that was too high. And then in the fall of 40, my dad bought an old Model D John Deere. He did some fall plowing, but he wasn't liked. And then in January, in 41, he bought a new A John Deere, starter, lights, rubber tires, and that was really something. And that was in 41 then, and then in 43, he bought another B John Deere, and 44, he bought a newer B John Deere, and that was really modern to go out in the field with. And I know he was the first one in this whole area to have a tractor with a starter and lights and a rubber tire. And a lot of times, the horses had to rest and they'd quit early, and then they'd come driving out in the field or horseback or whatever to see how that works with that tractor working at night with the lights on and everything. And it was really modern when they had that kind of equipment. And then in 46 we quit using horses, and then that was really modern. We had 2 John Deere tractors then. But as the years went along, he didn't have too many, my dad, but as the years went along, got a little bigger. But 4-bottom was the biggest one he had.
And what kind of impact did that have on seeding, on harvesting, on all the chores of growing a crop? How much time would it save you?
I don't quite understand.
How much time did it save you using a tractor versus using the horses?
Oh, yeah, that saved a lot of time. Like I know the neighbor up here, he bought a B John Deere, 2-bottom plow, and said, well, at 5 o'clock in the morning, he was out in the field till 11 o'clock at night, he said, and then he'd pace off the field, and 15 acres, that would have taken me better than 5 days to plow with a team of horses. So that improved, and he only had a 2-bottom. See, at that time, my dad had a 4-bottom.
So did you buy more land then, because you were able to plow faster?
No, he had pretty much the same land. That was quite a bit. He had 960 acres is what my dad had there, and he had bought some in the 30s. He had bought 200 acres west here, and then later on, my grandpa had 2.5 quarters here yet, and that he wouldn't sell them to him until he died, and then stepmother sold it to him. And he said he paid for it 3 times with the shares that he always had to give away.
Now, living on the farm, did you guys ever experience isolation? Where you were stranded and didn't get to talk to other people and were just stuck with the family?
Not really.
Were you closer with the town community, or did you guys have your own farm community?
But pretty much the farm community. And like I said, it was a cart plane bunch around here, and
Would everybody around here also have gone to the same church?
yeah,
Which church did you guys go to?
St. John's Catholic Church in North New Zealand. It's not there anymore.
Right now.
No.
How important was religion for your family? How often did you guys go to church?
Whenever possible. We didn't really never missed unless there was a snowstorm or whatever, like that one winter I said where we didn't go to church or didn't get the mail or nothing for 13 weeks.
That's right. Now, for your first communion, did you say that in German or in English?
English.
Never made any of your sacraments in German?
No.
Had the church already switched to using English for as much as you can remember? Or did the priest ever still say a homily in German?
When I was young yet, yes. I didn't until I probably was about 15 years old, and then they went to English.
What was that like when he switched and started using English?
It was different, yeah. It was, I don't know what it was. I got more out of it in church, you know. You didn't understand that Latin, and it just...
Did you understand the German homilies?
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
didn't
and we played the rosary in German till I left home, till I was 18 years old. I always played the rosary in German at home.
Did the rest of the church like it when the priest began saying the homily in English instead of German?
Pretty much so, I think, because mostly the older fellas had died away, you know, the old Germans, and that I suppose, you know, if it would have been sooner, I guess these old Germans wouldn't, wouldn't have understood the homily or whatever in English, and then a lot of them, like the Lutheran Church at Ashley, they up to about 10 years ago, they had two services in every Sunday morning, one in German and one in English, and that's only about, I'd say, about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, that they quit the German.
Oh. People really held on to the German language.
They really held on to German language. Yeah.
Oh. Did you guys celebrate the church's name's day?
Yep.
What was that celebration like?
Big, like a wedding. You know, like St. John's, you know, that feast day was June the 24th. And I know my mother, she'd bake pies and cook for a whole week. They'd come from Strasbourg, you know, relatives from Strasbourg and from Napoleon and all over. Like, it was almost like a wedding, you know.
And they would come over to the church, or would they come to your farm?
They'd come to church, there was church, and then they'd come to the farm over here, you know. And then, of course, my dad's uncle lived here, and someone stopped here, and some stopped over there. But it was a big thing, that church feast.
What special foods would your mom make for the name's day?
That one I can't remember, because I was never a fussy eater.
There's nothing she made that you didn't
I
like?
could eat anything. And if she'd make a new dish, she asked me how did you like it? And I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to make it anymore. I said.
Did you guys celebrate your own name's days?
Yes.
When was your name's day?
January the 10th.
And you'd again have a bunch of family?
Yeah, and people come in and would have beer and, you know, drinks and food and play cards.
Your wife says you still do for name's day.
Huh?
Do you still celebrate the name's day now?
No, this year was the first year, I think, that we didn't celebrate it.
But up
It's
until
kind of,
this
it's
year.
going out, yeah. This is the first year that we didn't, but up to this last.
We did last year, we didn't.
Oh, this year we did, last year we didn't, yeah.
So would you celebrate your birthday then? Growing up as a kid, did you have a birthday
No.
celebration? The name's day was more of the birthday.
Yeah, and well, that name's day wasn't celebrated. You know, when I grew up, it was just when after we were married. So when we started celebrating William.
So did your family celebrate when you were growing up? Did they celebrate any other name's day besides St. John's?
Oh yeah, all these. You know, my mother's Catherine. They celebrated her name's day, and Sebastian, that was a big one around here. And St. Anthony, that was a big one. And most of them were Adam and But Adam, I don't even know when that is. But Anton and Sebastian were the biggest ones in this area here. That was.
Did you guys pull together ever to have a celebration, or would each family have their own?
Each family. No, there's Sebastian and Anton. They were probably 4 or 5 of them would get together, and they'd rent a city hall at Zealand and in a band to play, and they'd dance and drink all night long.
The red eye would come out?
Yep, then the red eye would come out.
What did you guys celebrate, or what did you guys do for Christmas? How would you celebrate Christmas as a child?
Well, it's Santa Claus, and everybody got a gift, and
would you just get one gift?
pretty much so, yeah.
What would be a typical gift that you would have gotten?
Well, it was mostly clothes to wear, like a scarf, or, when we got older, gloves, or a couple of pair of socks, or whatever.
Would your family sing Christmas carols?
Yeah.
Was your family musical? Did you have a lot
No,
of...
no.
It was around Christmas time to sing the carols. Would you go to midnight mass?
Yeah, never missed it.
What would you guys do for Easter?
Wow, that has changed a lot too since I was a kid. We'd Wednesday afternoon we go to St. John's Church, and Wednesday night and go to confession. Thursday morning we'd go to church and go to communion. And then it seems like the young people were done until Easter Sunday. And then it's Friday and Saturday just the older people went to church. Why, I don't know. And then on Easter Sunday, and of course, the women, they all had their Easter outfits on, and that was a big thing for the women, the Easter outfits. They had to have shoes and a purse and hat and gloves all the same color. I still remember that. I can remember Millie buying one out in Butte, Montana for Easter, or Easter outfit, and it was pink.
Would you guys hide Easter eggs? Would you get any kind of presents?
Yeah.
You would hide the Easter eggs around?
Yeah.
What kind of presents would you get on Easter?
No, we never got presents on Easter. And
just the girls got new dresses, their Easter dress.
And I know my older brother Alvin, he lives in Strasbourg now, and Jim, the youngest one in the family, he's not here anymore, but he was probably about 5, 6 years old, and Alvin would always, you tied your bowls, your Easter baskets, and Alvin would always put a bowl out, big, make the dough for bread dough in there. And Ma would always just put him in a couple of peanuts and an egg, and of course Jim's was big and full, and he got such a bang out of it. He was so proud that he got so much, and Alvin didn't get anything in his big bowl.
Which holiday was your favorite growing up? Was there a holiday that you preferred?
Well, I like Christmas and I like New Year's.
What'd you do for New Year's?
Go dancing.
Go dancing in town?
Yeah, that. I always tell people I'm getting older that there's 2 things that I really miss. They asked me, what's that? And I said, my dancing and my strength. I said, I got no more power, I said, what I used to have. And
so dances were really popular?
Yes, very, very popular in those days.
Were there any other events or places that the youth would go on a weekend or on an evening?
With what?
In the evening, would you guys go to the movies too, or were...
Yes, Sunday nights we would always go to the movie.
Do you remember, did you have a favorite movie when you were growing up?
Not really. I liked Westerns, and I still do.
Where would you go to the movie at? Which town?
Oh, they had movies in the City Hall at Zealand, and then he had a theater, a brand new one, for about 3 years, and they burned down in 47, I think. And then we went to Strasbourg and to Linton. And then later on, Linton had a drive-in. That didn't last too long. And well, then TV come out, and it seemed like nobody they rented movies and nobody, wanted to go to the show halls anymore. And I can still remember we went to, as a student at Zealand for 15 cents. Well, then we went to Strasbourg and as an adult, in Linton, that was 50 cents. And man, that was a lot of money. And then when the drive-in opened up, then we had to pay 65 cents to get in. That was a lot. To go in and sit in the car to watch a movie.
So now if boys ask girls out for a date, where would they take them?
Well, usually out for, like in a dance, out and buy her lunch and go in and dance some more and take her home and buy her some popcorn. She wouldn't go in the theater without popcorn.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, the kids have asked that question. I said, well, it was her sister's fault. I said, when her sister got married to Adam Schumacher Mile on the quarter over. She was 7 and I was 10 when we met the first time, I said. And I don't know, we had been friends right along all those years. And then in 54 I went into service and had a date with her every now and then. And in 54 I went to service. In 55 she went to California. And 56 I got out of the service and she came back from California and then we started dating seriously. And then in 57 we got married a year later.
What was your wedding like?
It was big. It was a double wedding. Got married with my sister.
Wow.
Yeah, what do we have? About 500, I guess, people at the wedding. And very expensive wedding.
Where did you have it at?
At Zealand. And, it was 3 sides. Her parents and my brother-in-law's parents and my parents. And they shared the bill 3 ways. And we had lunch, we had chicken soup, we had soup, noodle soup and everything, chicken for dinner and a big supper. Then we knew at 1 o'clock we'd got married in the morning. We got married at 10 o'clock and then we had lunch. And then we started dancing at 1 o'clock until 6 and then we stopped at 8 and started dancing at 8 until 2 o'clock in the morning. And what that cost, those drinks all the time. It cost each family $165.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, your wedding only went 1 day?
Yeah.
You did a 2-day celebration?
No. I think that 2 days was more or less in the earlier days. And I can see that too because they traveled with horses. And, for relatives to come to the wedding, and one day and go home or whatever. I was told that my grandpa, when they celebrated these names days around here, that they celebrated my grandpa's name day, Stanislaus, the people would come the day before. And then next day they would celebrate their names day and danced, and the next day they went home. Because I said, my dad said it often, the horses would, they had to let their horses out and let the company's horses put in the barn. And he said, and then they always put them in the hay fence in case a blizzard would come up so they wouldn't get lost. But they stayed there. It took 3 days until the celebration was over. Then I can remember us growing up and my dad and these Schumachers up here and Tony Wald, and there was a name stain and they'd get together our house next door and then they had a few drinks and then they practiced up their singing, and these Germans, they just loved to sing. I remember that, and even when my first cousins started getting married, there was always a group of 5, 6 standing here and 5, 7 standing here, and they were all singing German. They were always singing, those Germans.
Do you remember any of the songs?
No.
Okay. Did you ever have, growing up, any favorite nursery rhymes or any favorite sayings?
No, not really.
Do you remember anything your parents would tell you?
Pardon?
Did your parents ever have any words of wisdom for you guys?
Not really, I don't think. No. Just as long as you told the line, you were okay.
And still a kid during World War II.
Yeah.
Do you remember what was going on?
Yep.
What was your impression of what was happening? What did you think about the war?
Well, I was sitting in, especially in trashing time, this Tony Wald was newlywed and he lived here in his house, and his wife listened to the radio all day long, and I can remember that real well when we'd come in the evening for supper, and then she told us what happened that day, and I can still remember when Italy surrendered, when she told us that, and of course felt good about that, and seeing the war quit in 45, and then I would have been 12 years old, when the war quit.
Do you remember hearing about the end of the whole war?
Yep.
Can you tell me about that when you heard it?
Well, everybody was really happy. I mean, it was really, really pleased, that the war ended, and especially, these guys, his farm was in Sebastian, from that farm was in the Bios from up here. There were two of them in there, and everybody was glad the war was over, so these boys could come home, and they're at Hague, I think, from the Hague church, there were quite a few of them that got killed in there. But from Seal, there was only two of them, that got killed in the Second World War.
Did the rationing from the war affect you guys out here on the farm?
Pardon?
Did the rationing from the war, did that affect you guys?
No, not on the farm here, no. Because I always said there was the drought and the depression, I said, and then followed by the war, I said, but we always, like I said, we had chickens, we had pigs, and we had ducks, and every fall of the year after harvesting, Dad would go to town and buy 1,000 pounds of flour. That lasted until next year.
1,000 pounds of flour?
100 pounds of sugar.
Where did your mother keep all
We
that?
kind of had a spare room upstairs in the house. Just kind of stored it in that spare room in the house that we didn't use. And
you never worried about bugs getting in it or anything like that happening?
No, never had any problem with that.
Wow. That's a whole lot of flour.
And the only thing I can remember about when the war quit, and then we were working out in the field, as first year we didn't use any horses, and of course I've liked sweets all my life, and the girls would bake a cake and bring it out, and me and my brother would eat a half a cake and drink a half a gallon of milk. That was our lunch. Because sugar was rationed. Well, that kind of bothered. The sugar was rationed. And
as a child, what do you think was one of the most adventurous things you did?
I really can't answer that, I guess.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
Do you have a happiest memory from your childhood?
Well, I think one of them was probably when I got confirmed. I didn't have to go to catechism anymore after that. But I'm serious, that was some of the things that you kind of looked forward to.
Did you look forward
or even getting looked forward, getting to go to a dance. Like I said, I love to dance, and that's one thing my parents always did. They had the WNEX Bohemian Band on every night at 6:30 on the radio. In the wintertime, we always made sure that we had the chores done and we were in the house until that came on. And then I had a sister, and then a brother, and then myself, and then my parent and my sister after me, and then me and my younger sister and the two older ones. They made us dance, and they showed us the steps, and we, when we started going to dance, I was only 15, and we were terrific dancers. So when we started going, we didn't have to learn how to dance because we learned at home, and that was kind of exciting to go to first dance, and
Especially when you know how to dance already.
Yeah, we knew how to dance pretty well. And
what do you think was the most stressful or worrisome experience you had as a child?
Well, I think the most stressful that I can remember is when my older sister died so fast. And because she cooked Sunday dinner yet, and by 11 o'clock that night she was gone. My dad went into town and got the doctor out, and he examined her, and he said, well, her heart just exploded. He said, she's only 15 years old. He said, her heart, but she was sickly all the time, and through her life. And then just all of a sudden, like I said, was sitting at the dinner table. Of course, the Germans always had soup for dinner Sundays, and soup. But she was choking. This Sebastian was a young kid, about 4 years older than she was, and he was always over there. My mother got a piano from home, and he liked to play that piano, and they were teasing each other, and we went and took a nap, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my mother called us and said to go out and do the chores. That Dad went in to get the doctor and the priest, and like I said, by 11 o'clock that night she was gone, and the Grace, when he checked her over, he said, if she's going to live until past midnight, he said, and then she'll probably live maybe 3-4 years yet, he said, but she won't get to 20. But by 11 o'clock she was gone that night. And, it's kind of a shock because she was, in fact, she stayed home. Usually on a Sunday, as the farm animals and stuff, one of the boys stayed at home, either me and my brother or one of the girls to cook Sunday soup and stuff. And she was the one that I stayed home to finish the chores, and she stayed home to cook the meal, the Sunday meal. And at 11 o'clock that night she was gone.
Did your family discuss what had happened?
Pardon?
Did your family discuss what had happened? Did you talk about your sister's death?
Kind of later on, yeah. And like I said, the doctor said her heart just exploded. And your grandpa was one of them that dug the grave. It was in March in 43, yeah.
Was it family members that would dig the grave?
Yes, they would do it like your, and friends like your grandpa and the Sebastian Wald here and Anton Schumacher up here, the family. The neighbors got together and dug the grave. And there was no hearse or anything at that time. And my dad and my great uncle went to Linton, got a coffin the next day, and I think it was 2 days later we buried her. And the neighbor up on the hill, Ben Schumacher, he had a old 26 Chevy truck and set the coffin in back there and took her into St. John's Church and buried her.
How long would people normally mourn for somebody?
They were tough, those Germans. 6 months.
No matter what.
Wore dark clothes in the morning. They weren't supposed to go to a dance or to a movie or anything for 6 months. And they were tough in that.
Wow. Did you guys had the wake service in the house?
Yeah.
Are there any other memories you have from your childhood that you'd like to share?
No, not really. Like I said, we had a lot of fun.
And you had fun just doing the chores?
Huh? Yeah, we went fun doing chores, doing work, and that seemed to be fun. I mean,
Was there a chore you didn't like doing?
Milk cows, pick rocks. Nobody wanted to do something like that, but it had to be done. Oh yeah, I'd like horse. Oh, ride horse. Oh man, did I ride horse in my lifetime, and just love horses. And I had horses that I hadn't lived up until about 3 years ago when I sold them, and I just loved horses.
So anything you could do on a horse, you were happy doing.
Yep,
sure
yeah.
You didn't mind.
Yeah. And like I said, that's not too far next door. But we didn't walk over here. We took the saddlers out of the barn. Then we had to stop and open the gate. Those days and everything, but we didn't walk. We went with the horses all the time.
And it's about 200 yards to the next
Yeah,
barn?
something like that, yeah. We used to step it off when we were kids. It was 146 steps from one house to another.
Or for a horse, it was about 50?
Yeah. Yeah, And then we had to get off and open the gate and then drive through and close the gate. But road horse.
Wow. Kind of to wrap up here, why do you think it's important to tell your life story?
Well, so the other generation knows, how we lived when we were that age, and it's really changed a lot. I feel there is younger generations, most of all, I always say kids are kids, I don't care from what generation they are. But I said these younger people now, they lack respect. Seems like they have no respect for anything anymore, and no respect for the parents or the grandparents. I used to tell my kids, I said, if I would have said something like that to my dad, I said, I'd still be laying on the floor, I said. But, they just elaborate out. And you can tell when even around here, you can tell which kids have respect and which don't. And some of them have a lot of respect like we had. And we got raised, especially my mother told me, hundreds of times, I guess, to have respect for older people, priests or ministers or law enforcement guys, have respect for those people. They have a job to do and you should have respect for them. Forget the Lutheran minister, actually, when we moved over there. I was a young man, I was 24 years old. And he was quite a guy, Reverend Crummer. And that I'd walk past him and, good morning, Reverend. And he'd take about 2 steps and I noticed on the side of my eyes he turned around. Now who the hell was that? And of course I did that despite because I like to do that. And people will respect you for that when you grow up. And I've always said a story when I went to high school. That was about 5 years ago. I was in the bar waiting for some more pinochle players for a tournament. Got to talking about the school, and I said, I wonder what's wrong with this picture here. I said, when I went to high school, I said, we had 95 kids in high school and 260 kids in the grades. So with 6 teachers. Now we got 79 kids in the whole school, I said, and we have 16 teachers. I said there was no superintendent to start out with. And we had 2 high school teachers for these 95 kids. And there was DeForge, he was the principal, and he had lost his leg way up here in the First World War. And Georgie Remford, they were tough on Georgie. DeForge was his name, and he had his desk in back of the students. And I said, Mr. DeForge was a man of very few words. And when Mr. DeForge got up, you knew that somebody did something wrong. And he'd go with the crutches where he wanted to go, and he'd lean on that one crutch, and the other one he got across your back. And I said, that was hard word, of course. Somebody said, well, did you have the experience? Well, of course, I said, that hurt. And this young fellow was in there, 35, 40 years old. He's a stack mover in there. That's it. Well, he said, did you go home and tell your dad? I said, hell no. I said, I would have gotten a lot worse from my dad, I said, than from that teacher, I said. But there was respect. And it only took two teachers for these high school kids, for 95 of them. But there was respect, And I found that out when I was in the Army. I said, I said the same thing with teachers. They have to earn the respect of the students also, I said, and vice versa. I said, these guys in the Army, I said, that respected their troops. They were terrific officers. The kids, and we had a captain, company commander, and I said that wouldn't have been, I don't think there would have been a guy in the Army that in that outfit that wouldn't have given his right arm or his leg for Captain Brusso. I said in the next company, I said he wouldn't have lasted 2 weeks in battle because he would have got shot from the back. I said because you have to have respect and gain your respect, and I feel that's what a lot of what these young kids like now is respect.
Are there any other thoughts or observations that you'd like to share about your memories about growing up out here on the plains?
Well, I thought it was great. And I always say we worked hard. We had to do a lot of work, but we didn't know any better. Just go and do it, and we were happy. And I tell my kids, hell, if you would have to go through what we went through, I said, out there, I said, half of these kids would commit suicide now, I said. But I said, we didn't know any better, I said. We were happy, I said. If we could only get to go away to the dance once a week, and that's what we did most of the time. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. But that's kind of all we lived for, just to go away and have fun. Do chores the next morning, and it was harder. Dad would always call half an hour earlier the next morning. When we jumped him a couple of times, he said, well, it takes me half an hour longer to get you out of bed, and that wasn't true either, but whatever. But one morning I'll never forget, Seal and the Golden Jubilee in 1952. Me and my brother were dating some girls from Strasbourg, and we took them home, and when we left Strasbourg, the sun was coming up. And my dad, no matter what time of the day, what night it was, he'd go up the stairway upstairs. Bua means boys. Ivlurish, what time is it? Well, in the wintertime you could get by with anything. But in the summertime, when the sun was coming up in Strasbourg, and we were on our home, and we took our shoes, coasted the car in front of the house, took our shoes off, we carried them halfway upstairs, boys. Yep. You don't have to go to bed anymore, he said. Oh, was that a long day? Holy mackerel, was that a long day. But that night we went to bed early. But I guess we had it coming. Like I said earlier, during the winter, well, it was usually 2:30, 3 or 2, but when the sun was shining for a while already, then you couldn't see it anymore. Because he didn't have a clock, they knew. He just wanted to know what time it was. And I married after one, I guess I'll never forget is when the 2 oldest girls started going away, and they jumped Millie one Saturday morning. How come Dad knows everything and he doesn't have to go away? And she asked me, she said, how come you know everything? I said, I was young once, and that wasn't too long ago. I said, they're doing the same things we did, trying to get by with the same things we did. And I still say that, watching how our kids grow up. I mean, they did the same thing that we did and tried to get by with the same things that we did. And especially when they said, what time was it when you got home last night? And, 1:45, 2 was their curfew, or 10 after 2 or whatever. But when they said didn't know it, don't know. Well, that went by about 3 times. And, was it that late again? If they said they didn't know, then you knew it was late when they came home.
They wouldn't lie, they just wouldn't quite tell you the truth.
Pardon?
They wouldn't lie about what time it was, they just wouldn't quite
tell
you
the truth. Yeah.
Well, is there anyone else you think we should interview for this project?
Well, if you can get Dan and Katie Klein, I think they would really do it. And I don't know if he would wanted Pete Welder in town. And like I said, he'll be in the 90 in November. And when he gets started to talk about his Air Force days, he was an airplane mechanic in the Second World War.
Oh wow! And, all right, we'll have to get in touch with both of those people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.